Going to get started here in just a second. Come back in the room. All we got. I had mentioned a couple of times, some of our recent meetings, that there's so much conversation about the electric vehicle industry and how we're going to power these vehicles that I wanted us to have an informational meeting, as many interested parties as possible today to weigh in and just as much as anything, help us identify the issues that we're going to have to deal with. Just seems to me we have a very good chance now before this industry takes off to get our necessary infrastructure in place and have a level competitive playing field for the various participants in the industry. I put on our agenda a list of speakers, and those were people that had contacted me beforehand and say we would love to speak. It was not limited to those people. So I'm going to put another sign-up sheet out here. If anybody additional has anything they may want to add, they're welcome to do that. And all we're talking about really is how we're going to get power to these cars, and how we're going to afford it, who's going to generate the power, who's going to do the charging stations, or whatever the technology may be. I want to try to let these speakers speak without being interrupted with questions initially, but then don't leave us, because we may call you back up if we have time to get in a little bit more detail here. We're just trying to, in law school, we would have called this issue spotting, trying to figure out exactly what are the issues we're going to have to address and confront. In some ways, I feel like, we're ahead of the curve. We're certainly handling this, or have an opportunity to handle this, better than the broadband build out that was sort of a mismatch, and we didn't have a game plan up front as that industry blossomed all of a sudden. So I want us to try to get this right. And an awful lot of conversation around the building, and I'm also hearing things about some of the federal money and the latest infrastructure bills that provide us a mechanism perhaps to do some of the funding of this, building out this system. So let's hear from people. I'll call if there is a sign-up sheet, if somebody else feels moved that they want to contribute to the conversation. We do have a hard stop at 4 o'clock today. Several of us here are on the Judiciary Committee, and Senator Albers is presenting a bill in Judiciary at 4 o'clock. So we're going to hear as far as we can get, before 4 o'clock, and then it's going to be departure. I want to go ahead and tell folks I like to keep our committee advised of what's coming next. We meet again Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock, and I have 2 bills that will be on the agenda. Senate Bill 478, Senator Tippins deals with retainage and construction projects, and Senate Bill 393, Senator Dolezal's bill, the Common Carrier Non-Discrimination Act. Those 2 will be on the agenda for Thursday afternoon, and just go ahead and give everybody a heads up. Those will be the issues we'll talk about at that time. All right, with that, we'll start. Mr. Bill Morey, you're signed up to speak to us, or Ben, Jordan, either one, with Georgia Automobile Dealers Association. We can. Let me make sure your mic's on so people can hear you around the building.
Good. Mr. Chairman, good afternoon, members of the committee. I'm Ben Jordan from the Georgia Automobile Dealers Association. We represent the state's franchised new car and truck dealers. We have about 500 members throughout the state, and our members employ about 35,000 Georgians and basically all the communities in the state. They do business here in Atlanta, in the suburbs, in the mountains, in South Georgia, and the coast, and all points in between. Thank you for the opportunity to be heard on this issue. There are a number of different ways we could address electric vehicles, generally speaking, but today we're here to talk about charging of electric vehicles. And believe it or not, the dealership lots could very well be locations where not just consumers or customers of the dealership, but potentially members of the public could charge their vehicles. Our dealers are very much in the process of selling and servicing electric vehicles today and planning to sell and service the electric vehicles of the future. And as part of that, they are making investments in their own facilities and in their own personnel to do that. I'm joined today by one of our dealers and a member of our board of directors, Mr. Mike Dominicone. He has 3 dealerships here in Georgia: a Cadillac dealership, a Subaru dealership, and a Karma dealership. And like many of his colleagues and members of GADA, his companies are making investments in their facilities to sell and service electric vehicles, including chargers. So if it's okay, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'd like to introduce you to Mr. Dominicone and let him speak a little further about that.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Mike Dominicone, as Ben said. I'm the owner and operator of Classic Cadillac, Classic Subaru, and Karma of Atlanta. We've been in the automobile business in Georgia for 42 years. My dad ran the Potamkin stores from 1980 to 1992, and we purchased the Cadillac and Subaru dealership in 1992, and we've been operating that now for 30 years. When we're talking about charging these vehicles, you know, I'm one of 500 automobile dealers, franchise automobile dealers in the state of Georgia. And we would like to be a solution and be part of the conversation on how we can make this work for the Georgia consumers. I've made a significant investment in our store over the last 6 months and will continue through the end of this year. Just to put that in perspective for you, we've spent $400,000 on chargers for our sales department, chargers for our service department, and chargers for our consumers. And there's a lot of things that we need to understand in regards to the legalities and the laws of charging customers for power. And when I say customers, I'm referring to the public. We intend to have charging stations, and we're going to need a significant number of charging stations on our properties and on our lots, and would welcome the opportunity for the public to come there to charge their vehicles. Much like customers have to stop at a gas station to get gas, they're going to have to stop somewhere to charge their vehicles. And we are certainly willing and able to partake in that. We will continue to make investments. Again, I'm one of 500 dealers, and I will tell you the majority of my colleagues are all making these investments today, and will continue to make these investments into the future, as well as update our facilities and our infrastructure to really figure out the needs of the electric future. I don't think that anybody really knows where the electric future is going to take us in the automobile space. There's a lot of speculation of, is it 20, 30, 40, 50% by 2030? Nobody really knows. But what I would like to share with this committee is that the Georgia automobile dealers are willing and able to help Georgia consumers any way we can with charging their vehicles. So thank you guys so much for your time. I appreciate it. And if you guys have questions for me, we'll stick around. Thank you.
Chairman Cowsert and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to present today. My name is Max McBrayer. I am the CEO of Racetrack. Headquartered in Atlanta, Racetrack is a family-owned business that has been serving customers since 1934. Together with the franchise brand Raceway, Racetrack operates over 750 convenience stores and employs almost 4,000 Georgians. This year, we will open 10 new stores in our state, creating an additional 300 jobs. I'm proud of our investment in this great state with 148 locations. Racetrack is Georgia's 3rd largest private company. I'm also proud that Georgia has its eye on the future, specifically electric vehicles. Georgia is on the cutting edge of transportation energy for the next century. Our state is set to receive $135 million from the federal government to install EV chargers. This, combined with the new Rivian EV plant, will make Georgia a hub for the future of transportation energy. At Racetrack, we are excited and committed to being a vital part of this transition. But there are several problems that we must address if we want to successfully align the existing fuel market and the emerging technology. Today, I'm speaking to you on behalf of Racetrack and the Charge Ahead Partnership. We are a coalition of retailers and organizations that want to bring more EV chargers to Georgia. Many of the fuel retailers, convenience stores, and truck stops in our industry are household names. Racetrack, Quick Trip, Pilot, Circle K, these same companies are vital to bringing EV chargers to the public. Competition is the key ingredient in innovation. It is what leads our industry to embrace new technology and better services, while also keeping customer prices in check. This committee and the legislature have the ability to inject those same competitive forces into the electricity refueling market. Doing so will lower costs to consumers and result in widespread availability of fast chargers throughout the state. Many people are afraid to buy an EV because they think they won't be able to find a place to refuel. This so-called range anxiety is valid because many of the existing chargers are in the wrong locations. Consumers do not want to seek out vacant or obscure locations to refuel. People want a predictable and reliable fueling experience. They want to feel safe. They want to access food, restrooms, and the many amenities they find today when they refuel their cars. Racetrack knows what customers want when they refuel. This is our area of expertise. For people who don't drive an EV today, range anxiety doesn't even exist. This committee must ask, why is that? It is because private businesses had a private incentive to invest in the right real estate for refueling infrastructure. Businesses like Racetrack regularly invest to meet consumer demands when other factors do not undermine those investments. Today, two major impediments prevent companies like Racetrack from investing in EV chargers. First, many states, including Georgia, allow investor-owned utilities to charge all of their customers higher electric bills every month. This rate basing is how utilities underwrite their investment in charging infrastructure. They do so for all customers, whether they can afford a vehicle, let alone an electric vehicle. On first glance, this may sound appealing, but it is counterproductive to the widespread deployment of EV charging. It is an unfair practice that discourages private investment. We understand the utilities have a role to play. Utilities should focus on the necessary electricity generation and grid upgrades. Our concern arises when those utilities charge their customers a higher bill so that they can operate the EV chargers themselves. No one is stopping a utility from competing for EV charging business. But how can we sell electricity to drivers when power companies get to subsidize their cost with money from all ratepayers? The fact is, we can't. Our intention is not to preclude utilities from putting in EV charging. We seek a level playing field. In rural parts of the state, it may make sense for utilities to assume this burden. We understand that there are parts of the state where they may need to make an exception, but those exceptions should be few and far between so as not to crowd out private investment. Do not allow yourself to be convinced that this exception should swallow the rule. The second major impediment to private investment is the way electricity is sold today. In addition to our inability to resell electricity for vehicle refueling, the current rate structure blocks private investment in EV charging infrastructure. The large demand charges imposed are hidden in confusing rates on retailers who install fast chargers, make it impossible for us to compete on price, even if we were allowed to charge for charging. To achieve more widespread EV charging, this problem must be fixed. Retailers must be able to buy electricity without the punitive impacts of demand charges. It is possible to find a solution. We have already seen special rates for EV charging implemented in other states, including Alabama. In sum, the existing refueling network can most efficiently bring widespread charging to market, but the private sector needs a level playing field so that we are confident in making investments. With these changes, you will see an influx of private investment dollars for EV chargers. Furthermore, any federal and state dollars you commit will be leveraged several times over. Our goal is to help secure Georgia's place as a leader in EV growth, but the state will concede that role if lawmakers fail to address these electricity market failures. Legislation is needed now. Georgia Power is already deploying ratepayer-funded EV chargers. Racetrack and other fuel retailers have no chance to compete in this space unless there is legislation to level the playing field. Georgia Power has a rate case upcoming in July. The timing is perfect to implement a rate for EV charging, but the Public Service Commission needs a push from this legislature to set competitive rates for EV charging. I'm honored to have testified before you today. Thank you very much. And we encourage the expansion of EV charging the market by supporting private investment in it. Thank you.
Thank you, and please don't leave. We're going to have a
Okay.
couple for you.
Sure.
Not right now, but
I'm not
just don't
leaving.
leave the
No,
meeting, 'cause
I'm-
we may have a couple.
I have
questions.
somebody who showed me here. So I can't leave the lady.
What kind of vehicle, just out of curiosity?
It's a Lexus, gasoline powered.
That was the point.
Racetrack gas.
Well, we had hoped for some. All right, Mr. Austin Hackney with the Home Builders Association of Georgia. He will be appearing with us via Zoom. How about that technology working on the first shot? Austin, can you hear us okay?
I can hear y'all. Can you hear me?
Can hear you and see you. You're looking good. We just need you to share your thoughts on the EV charging.
Great. Well, thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman. My name's Austin Hackney here representing the Home Builders Association, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to zoom in from Orlando, Florida. I'm here for the International Builders Show with about 1,500 other Georgians who made the trip down for the week. So thank you for letting me be here. I wanted to offer a perspective on new home construction and government mandates, something that we talk about a lot at the Georgia legislature. The International Code Council develops the construction codes that are mandatory in the state of Georgia. And we have 8 different mandatory codes that new construction operates under. And those are mandatory across the state. The International Energy Conservation Code, or the IECC, is one that deals with insulation and other energy saving measures. And so the 2018 version of that code is what Georgia has adopted to make sure that our energy code is up to date. And the Department of Community Affairs uses a industry stakeholder group to amend that code annually. And we're honored to participate in that process. The 2021 version of that energy code was developed last year and included a mandate that every new home would be EV ready. And so that means not the full charger that you might see on the interstate, but to upgrade the electrical outlet in the garage with a 220, 240 volt outlet, upgrade the conduit in the walls, and potentially upgrade the breaker box to handle all that power coming in and out of the house. So not an insignificant investment. The folks at ICC described a $920 upfront cost to install that in a new house. Of course, those numbers were from 2018. So I think based on what we saw last year, you could probably add 20% to that and bring it up to around $1,100 investment on the front end for every new house. And they told us that was a cost savings because it was about Well, in 2022 dollars, $4,260 to retrofit an existing outlet in the garage to handle the electric vehicle charging equipment. So, a significant savings, but that assumes that eventually, after spending that $1,100, you'll actually buy an electric vehicle to park in your garage at night and charge there. I think our National Association of Home Builders was successful in appealing that mandate and getting it removed from the 2021 version of the IECC. Said it was outside the scope of energy savings. And so we have been kind of saved from that unfunded mandate for now. But I think we can expect to see that rule and others like it come into effect in future construction codes that are mandatory across the state. Currently, I'm only aware of a single local ordinance in the state of Georgia that requires new single-family homes to be EV ready. And we're hopeful that that mandate from the local governments doesn't grow across the state. But as I was looking around Google today, I saw a number of about 5,200 electric vehicles sold in the state of Georgia in 2019. And I understand that that number could increase exponentially over the next decade. But in that same year, there were about 47,000 new single-family homes built in the state of Georgia. So, to require every new home to be EV ready is asking Georgia consumers to make an investment that we at the Home Builders Association don't feel is necessary yet. So while we're encouraged by all the new investment in electric vehicles, and I personally think that Rivian truck is very sweet looking, I think that if we can delay these government mandates for services that our customers aren't asking for, that we can take a step in the right direction for housing affordability. And I'm going to conclude my remarks there, but I wanted to say I appreciate the opportunity to share that perspective on EV charging and how it could affect the price of a new home, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the committee has.
Since you're not here in the room with us, we're going to let anybody that has questions ask you now. Any members have a question for Mr. Hackney? All right. Senator Lucas, what number's on your mic? 11?
Let me ask you something. How do you plan? You're in the home building business. You talking about the cost and construction costs have gone up considerably. Charging, if you put the electrical components in, how will the customer pay for the charging of that vehicle running into the house? Because I would assume it to be different equipment, like almost like a gas pump, but you plug it in and it charges.
Yes, Senator, thank you for the question. We look at the EV ready as kind of step one, where everything gets upgraded inside the wall in preparation for that homeowner to then install the actual charging unit that would operate off of that hardware that the new home builder kind of put in place with that expectation that they may in the future need to use it.
Okay.
All right.
I'll get to the charge.
Senator Brass, you're recognized for question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Austin, thanks for joining us. And those numbers you gave us, you said 900 to what? How much to retrofit a house and how much for a new house? Can you give me those numbers again real quick? And then kind of a tack on question there. Is that the actual cost, or is that, you're still going to have your markup and all that? Are you including that, or is that just your hard number labor and material cost?
Thank you for the question, Senator Brass. So those are the numbers that the experts at the International Code Council used when they were debating this whole mandate back in 2020. So they came up with a number of 3,550 to retrofit, 920 to install new. And I believe that does include labor in addition to the materials. Now, we saw prices go up so dramatically last year that I think you can add 20% to those numbers that they were discussing back in 2019.
Perfect. Thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Senator Ginn.
Number 3. Hey, Austin, Frank Ginn here. The one of the things that I've contemplated is, you know, we want to make sure that our grid in Georgia is sound, and that the electric vehicles bring a big asset for the electric providers by allowing off-peak sales. One of the things that I've contemplated was introducing legislation that required any automobile dealers or people that are retailing the electric vehicles to require to require them to provide a charger, not to have it in, you know, not installed or whatever, but if you just had a circuit pulled there, does that kind of cost what you're talking about just for a circuit, or is that including the charger and all the things that are involved with it?
So it does not include the charging unit. This is just the hardware that needs to get upgraded to handle that extra amount of power within the wall. So if you got your electrical outlets existing in your garage today, the one that you wanted to plug your car into would, in all likelihood, need to get pulled out of the wall and upgraded all the way back to the breaker box to have its own dedicated circuit in the box. And so the whole thing would kind of need to be upgraded to handle that load.
And I'm hearing the figure of $3,000.
In 2022, I would call that 4,250.
Okay. And the putting it in a new construction is about $1,000.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Senator Albers, you're recognized for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Austin, just to be clear, because I think that people could be confused by this, this is completely dependent to where the panel of your house is and the location of your charging station. If your panel is in your garage to put in a 50 amp circuit and a cable that's maybe 10 feet to an outlet, that's going to be a fraction of the cost versus one that might be on the opposite side of your house going up multiple floors. So that the cost could be a very, very wide range. And while I'm sure $3,000 is good for some, my panel's on the opposite side of my house and the total cost is about $1,400. So I just want to make sure that we're not overestimating that as well.
No, that's a great point. And there's a, there's a chance if you've made a renovation to your house in the last 20 years and added another bedroom or some square footage, that your panel may be, to the end of its capacity, and the whole breaker box would need to get upgraded to be able to handle the new load coming out.
Certainly, just make sure we know that there's a range there.
Senator Miller, how many gas operated vehicles sold in the state of Georgia last year? We just heard it was, what was that, 5,200 or something electric vehicles? What percentage are we dealing with?
I think Ben Jordan could probably speak to that. And also, I missed Mike Domenico's comments earlier. There's probably nobody in the state of Georgia got more experience than Mike in dealing with retailing of electric automobiles across the board. But Ben Jordan could probably answer that question.
You know, Ben?
Quick stab at it. Overall, Georgia marketing vehicles last year, about 366,000 vehicles. My understanding is 2.2% of those were battery electric, 2.2% battery electric, 4.6% regular old hybrid, 0.6% plug-in hybrid. So the rest would be internal combustion. So we're talking about 366,000 tons, 94% of those. That's the
Okay. How fast do you see it changing?
As Mike said, it's a big question. And there's no question that we expect the adoption to increase. So in 2017, battery electric vehicles were 0.4% of the market here. So that's 0.4% in 2017. 2021, despite the supply chain craziness, that number increased to 2.2% in just 4 years. here in Georgia, so we definitely expect that rate of adoption to increase.
Thank you. All right, next speaker I have is Stephanie Gossman and Larry Legg from Georgia Power. Yeah.
All right. Good afternoon. I believe I have some slides that were provided in advance that I'll refer to today, but thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to you all and for the time on this topic that there's a lot of interest in. My name is Stephanie Gossman. I'm the Electric Transportation Manager for Georgia Power Company. And mine was the other set, actually, please. And some of the conversations so far and those questions actually, Ben did a good job. Some of the numbers I plan to go over as well in this presentation, just to have a good foundation so that we can continue the conversation about charging and opportunities in Georgia. Oh, really? Okay. Okay. Well, okay. The visuals would be helpful, but I'll go through it and let you know. First, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the terminology that's used in terms of the charging. Level 2 DC fast charging. Those are the common ones that we're talking about in terms of public charging. And so level 2 is at the 240 volt we just heard, in the home builders. Those are the kind that you'd install at your home. Also in public, it's going to take hours to charge a vehicle with level 2. DC fast charging is on the order of minutes. Now that's 20 to 30 minutes. So it's still a long time compared to fueling a car, but by comparison, it is very fast charging. And the power requirements for that's 480 volt connected, and it's much more substantial in terms of grid impact. And for electric transportation technologies, the focus of the conversation today is really on the light duty passenger fleets, but I think it's important to recognize the technology availability is growing, and it's off-road, it's on-road, it's light, medium, and heavy duty that is becoming more accessible and available. And as that becomes more available, those heavy duty in particular have higher charging requirements that are still being determined and evaluated today. So setting the stage for Georgia, again, this conversation from here on is really focused on light duty passenger vehicles. Last year, 2021 data showed 3.5% approximately of the nation of the new car sales were EVs. In Georgia, about 2.5%. So I know this data kind of fluctuates. You said 2.2, 2.5% here in Georgia. And I know that shows it's below the national average, and it is, but that's representative of change, very positive change in Georgia in terms of a positive trajectory and where this is going. And I'll give you a couple of facts to that point. So 2020 data for similar type data, that was about 1.5% of new car sales. So that's just 1 year's time. We're talking almost 50% increase in new car sales being electric vehicle types. Now that includes plug-in hybrids, I think too, but altogether the ones that would charge. In Georgia as well, looking at the rural adoption in particular, in 2020, there were 33 counties that had 0% adoption. 2021, there were only 24. So that's about a 30% reduction or trend in the positive direction towards adoption. So what does that look like for total number of vehicles? Well, Georgia, the latest data I have from the DOE was 2020, but there were 23,000 current EV registrations at that time. But I can tell you in 2020, back to the positive trend, there were about 5,000 new vehicles in the top 5 counties in terms of adoption in Georgia. That represented 5,000 new EVs on the road. In 2021, it was over 6,000. So in just 2 years in the top 5 counties alone in Georgia, that's 12,000 new EVs on the road. And we, again, expect that to continue. And EPRI, the Electric Power Research Institute, projects that it could be, by 2025, adoption could be as high as 13% of new car sales would be electric vehicles. So substantial numbers coming potentially. Now, we need a lot of charging infrastructure to support that. We're actually doing pretty well in Georgia, but we've got to continue to keep that up. We are top 10 in the nation in terms of publicly available level 2 and DC fast charging already, but there is still room for improvement there. So what's driving the increased adoption? Well, greenhouse gas emissions is a big part of that. And the transportation sector in particular is the largest emitter of greenhouse gases. And as well, electric vehicles, the term total cost of ownership is important in the context of this conversation. So they are cheaper overall over the life of the vehicle to own and operate from a fuel standpoint, as well as maintenance. There we go. Thank you. Those are the slides. Yes. Much nicer than just my voice. And so beyond that, there's other external factors, including from a federal perspective, we've mentioned infrastructure bill, which I'll get to in just a little bit, but as well as some of our communities and from a utility perspective, our end use customers making very strong and sometimes aggressive statements on sustainability goals that heavily focus on electrifying their transportation. And then we, of course, have the manufacturers. This is just a list of a few of them. And we've seen those are pretty aggressive goals too, that will continue to put more vehicle makes and models on the road, which gives consumers more options and hopefully drives down the price a bit more too. Do I control this from here? Okay. There we go. So in order for those adoption trends to continue, again, we've got to have publicly available charging as well as the at-home charging. We just have to have charging available for consumers. And this data is from 2020, I'll point out, but in Georgia, there were over 2,500 publicly available level 2 chargers and over 600 DC fast charging ports. Those are parking spaces, plugs for vehicles that could be plugged in Georgia. And that's from a variety of charging providers. You see a list there on the slide. There's so many more that are not listed. And we're just proud at Georgia Power, and I know the EMCs, to be part of that solution as electric utility providers. But looking at the map, what you see here is from a website called PlugShare. That is a map, if you're not familiar with it, that EV drivers go to, and there's an app too, where you can find publicly available charging close to you or along your route. And you can plan your route to ensure that you can have time to charge. And so what you see there, those are just the DC fast charging sites available in Georgia. Again, representative of so many providers, and there's more still coming in Georgia, which is important. So Georgia Power actively embraces the opportunities this market presents to help remove barriers to adoption for our customers and help meet their goals. Again, some of them have sustainability goals. Sometimes it's to reduce their operations cost, and for many of them, it's both. We offer infrastructure programs as well as rebates for our residential, commercial customers and home builders in that as well. The infrastructure programs are critical for customers to help reduce costs for the technology when it's still in its infancy, such as this is. Georgia Power's community charging program is one such program that helps fill the current void to provide drivers and encourage them in their travels with EV, to provide fast charging and enable long distance travel throughout the state of Georgia. And we like to say that it brings range confidence to help combat that range anxiety that we know is present for so many drivers. To be clear, we are in the business of providing safe, reliable, affordable, and clean energy and electricity. But in this market today, there's a need for infrastructure to help get us to where we will go. And we want it to be available for all Georgians when and if they're ready for it. And from personal experience, if you don't have the infrastructure, knowing that you can use your EV when and where and how you want to do it, you're not going to make the change. And so I've been able to go to the beach, pull a camper trailer up to the North Georgia mountains. But if I hadn't had charging that told me I could do those things that fit my lifestyle, I wouldn't have made that change. So in order to be part of this solution for our customers, we're proud to offer 57 locations currently throughout the state. And excuse me, this program actually started as a pilot in 2014, 2016. Most of those sites were predominantly in the metro Atlanta area. Since then, in the 2019 rate case order, we received funding, $6 million over 3 years, which ends at the end of this year, to invest in publicly available charging infrastructure. And most of those sites since that time with that $6 million have been invested outside the metro area. to make sure that we include our rural and underserved communities as well. These sites begin with customer interest, and we work with a variety of business types, including the entertainment industry, lodging, smaller convenience store chains, as well as cities, municipalities, to ensure that the charging is available in various parts around the state. And it considers the location, safety, accessibility, proximity to other fast charging to ensure that it's in the right places for consumers, for drivers. We want to continue to focus on key corridors, though. That's a big driver to make sure you can go where you want to go. And so you'll see a lot of them focus on interstate travel right now, because that's part of the guidance from the Federal Highway Administration, which will help drive the infrastructure bill funding, the 135 million coming to Georgia. That will help drive the strategy for the DOT as well. And so we've been following that guidance when choosing the locations throughout the state. And as a regulated utility, we have a great opportunity to serve the state overall and not to limit access to public charging just to those areas that already have the higher adoption. So if you haven't seen one of the sites or any public fast charging site, this is what our community charging program looks like. There's 2 sites, 2 plugs, and I can describe to you how you use it if you've never used one before, but I won't go into that right now. So I mentioned the Federal Highway Administration. This is just a screenshot of the 2021 capture of their map, which they call EV corridors, where they designate where there's still corridors pending, where there's a need for charging is another way to say that. And then those that already have some to close some gaps. I'm going to zoom in to Georgia here. And the good news is, as I said, Georgia has a lot of publicly available fast charging even. So most of our lines there are green, and I know it's hard to see, but there's solid green lines where corridors are ready. And then there's the orange dotted lines where they're still pending, where there's still opportunities to improve. And so back to that strategy for Georgia, trying to use our program to invest in the right places. 3 of our new sites last year were located in those 3 circled areas because they were identified gaps per the Federal Highway Administration. So again, we're proud to be part of the solution to help drive Georgia forward in this market. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak, and I'm happy to answer any questions later, but I'll defer to my other speakers here.
Thanks, Stephanie. And thanks. My name's Larry Legg. I work for Georgia Power Company. I'm in the pricing and rates department. And I wanted to just talk for a minute about the rates that we charge EV chargers and our customers in general. As you know, we're a regulated utility, regulated by the Public Service Commission. The commission ensures that we set fair rates, fair and equitable rates for all of our customers. Certainly, we've had success working at the commission over the years to identify opportunities to design rates specific to certain industries, to certain end uses, things like that. This is no exception. This is a market that's starting to grow faster and will, in all likelihood, mature over the next several years. But I want to make sure that that I communicate our cost structure and how that impacts the rates we charge to customers. As Ms. Gossman mentioned, there are over 3,000 EV charging stations or connections in the state right now. Many of those Georgia Power serves on a number of different rate options that are available to those customers. In setting rates at the commission, Georgia Power, as a cost-based utility that's allowed a return as approved by the Public Service Commission, we have to recover the cost to serve customers. And so there are 3 main cost components that we look at. One is a customer-related cost. And if you think about your home, whether you use any energy or not, you have to have a meter on your house. You have to have a service drop that runs from the pole to your home or underground to your home. You have to have a transformer out front for the electricity to be transformed to your voltage level for use, even if you don't use any electricity in a given month. We have to have billing in place. We have to send you a bill. We have to have a call center to take calls or a website set up to assist customers online, even if they don't use electricity. So those are all fixed costs that aren't related to how much energy you use, but related to us putting infrastructure in place to serve your business. Those are all customer related costs. We also have energy costs, and think of that as the fuel stock that goes through our power plants, whether it's whether it's, coal, gas, renewable, nuclear, all the different types of energy that we generate as you purchase electricity from us, we sell it. That part is variable. It's on a per kilowatt hour basis. You get a bill that says how many kilowatt hours you use, and you're charged on a per kilowatt hour basis. And some months you use more if you use the air conditioner a lot in the summer, some months you use less. So it's variable based on how much you use. There's also infrastructure that's demand related. And we've heard discussion about demand related costs today. If you think about whether it's your home or a business, we have to have power plants and transmission lines and transmission substations and distribution system substations in place to be able to serve our customers, again, regardless of how much energy they use. Those are related to your peak demand. In the summer, we set a peak demand generally in Georgia because it's hot here. And we plan for that demand, and we build our system to meet that demand for the entire system and to be able to generate and distribute the electricity around the state. So that demand related cost is real. It's where we've gone out and invested in plant, in transmission and distribution to make sure we can serve the needs of our customers. And so demand costs are a real cost component for our business. So again, the demand charges reflect that recovery of costs from our customers according to how they cause that cost. So a customer that uses a lot of demand, a very high peak demand, but uses little energy, it wouldn't make sense for us to recover that energy, our entire investment just through the energy charges. It would make more sense to have a demand charge to reflect that part of the cost that they're causing, and a separate energy charge on a per kilowatt hour basis to reflect that portion of what they're causing. And so cost causation is an important concept in rate making. We're just trying to make sure those three components, customer related costs, energy related costs, and demand related costs, are fairly allocated through our rates to make sure that each customer who takes service from us is paying for what they're causing and what they're using, that the company can recover that. Otherwise, if we don't recover it from a given customer, then other customers are going to have to recover that cost. So there would be a subsidy between customers there. So just wanted to outline that, and happy to take any questions on that as well.
We're trying to hold them, but I got a couple I can't hold up on.
Yes, sir.
What is the cost per kilowatt hour? What are you charging for the charging stations? And is that the same as you would charge me, turn my lights on in my house?
So it varies greatly. If you think about it, there are in personal experience. So I drive a Nissan Leaf. I've driven an electric car for about 7.5 years now. There are some charging stations that I go to, maybe I'm out a little ways from town, and it doesn't get that much use because maybe I'm headed out of town and it's one that's not used that much. Well, that charging station, if you think about it, the infrastructure that Georgia Power had to put in place there, we had to build it, still had to have a substation, still had to have the distribution system, the transformer there to serve that. If it uses a lot fewer kilowatt hours, the price per kilowatt hour is going to be much higher there versus one that's in town that cars are just lined up. You may see, if you look up California, where there's a lot higher instance of electric vehicles, sometimes you'll see cars lined up waiting to charge. So the use of that, even though the demand use is high, the energy is high. So on a cents per kilowatt hour basis, the cost is much lower because you're able to spread that over a lot more kilowatt hours. So it really varies.
You might be charging less per kilowatt hour in cities than in rural areas.
It's not, that may be the way it works out. It's not intentionally that way. I would say it's more, you would pay less cents per kilowatt hour for a charger that you utilized more relative to its peak demand than one that utilized less.
And are those rates set by the PSC?
Yes, sir, they are.
That'll be it for now. Thank you.
Okay.
Senator, if you don't mind, I'll complement that just from the driver's perspective, from the community chargers that are out there. We actually charge per unit of time. So it depends on the level, but for fast chargers, it's 25 cents a minute, which is what the law requires here in Georgia right now. And we do that, and each charging provider can set whatever that cost is at their locations. But we do that for all of our sites statewide, which is competitive for the industry right now and other providers out there.
All right, so hold on with that. I thought that the retailers were not allowed to resell electricity. They were coming.
Per
and they
unit of
gave it
time.
free.
is the restriction there,
Right.
Not per kilowatt.
not per kilowatt hour. That's the distinction.
We sell to the charging company per kilowatt hour. Those were the rates I was talking about. And Stephanie's talking about the rate that a charging company, if I go plug in with my Leaf, they can charge me by the minute or by the hour. They can't charge me by the kilowatt hour as an owner of an EV.
How many kilowatt hours does it take to charge up your car?
My Leaf is 7.5 years old. It was originally had a 24 kilowatt hour battery, but it has deteriorated somewhat over 7.5 years. But it's been a great commuter car up till the pandemic. So it's probably more in the 18 or 19 kilowatt hour range of capacity now. Certainly the newer cars with longer range might have 90, 100 kilowatt hour capacity.
All right, thank you. Do you have one more? Senator again.
Thank you. Before Georgia Power steps off the mic, tell me, you're charging the retailer 25 cents a minute. What's the retailer charging the end use customer?
We're not. I'm sorry if that wasn't clear. We're charging the retailer who's then going to charge the end user. We're charging them according to our rates. We're not charging them by the minute. We're charging them per kilowatt hour.
And that's a 300 kW charger? What kW?
The DC fast chargers can be up to 350 kW. That's right. They can draw that much demand instantaneously.
So you're doing that at 25 cents a minute?
Yeah. I mean, the reseller can decide how much they charge per minute. That's Georgia Power charges at the 57.
I'm
that
trying
we
to
have.
ascertain if I run that 350 kW charger, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, what's it going to cost?
Yeah, I don't know if you have a sense of that stuff.
So yes, they're two different charges, as Larry mentioned, but the DC fast charger, that cost is going to be per unit of time. So 30, 40 minutes, whatever that provider has set up. So here for the Georgia Power community charging, 25 cents a minute at that fast charging, it'll be 25 cents times however many minutes.
So you're telling me for 40 minutes, I can get $10 and move on down the road.
That's right.
Thank you.
Good morning, Senator Lucas. What you got?
Ain't much I can say about this. How will the retail, the gas station, what kind of price are they gonna get to put the charges in? And the other question is, will y'all be putting charges around the state you said?
Yeah, the first one, so we don't actually sell the chargers to the charging companies. They can buy those out in the open market from anyone. We would set up the infrastructure for them to hook up the electricity, but there are other companies that sell the actual chargers.
Well, will y'all be setting up charges around the state?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have 57 locations around the state today.
So what are you charging? 25 cents a minute?
We do to the drivers.
The driver gets 25 cents a minute. So I would assume that the retailer would, in order to make it work, would have to sell 50 cents a minute.
Now, again, 25 cents a minute is just what we're charging the person who drives up and plugs in. Georgia Power doesn't charge the charging company by the minute. We charge them per kilowatt hour. So it's two different units of measure. The power company sells electricity to the charging company, say ChargePoint, that owns electric vehicle chargers at 25 a cents per kilowatt hour according to what commercial rate they're on. So that's one unit of measure is on a per kilowatt hour basis. Then they turn around and sell to the person who plugs in their car on a per minute basis, like 25 cents a minute, or on a per hour basis for the smaller chargers, the lower level chargers. It might be $1 an hour.
What I'm trying to find out is this. What happens in the competitive market? If Georgia Power is selling, and I'm a retailer, and I go out and decide I'm gonna have a place for folks to charge their cars. Where is the disadvantage of me being a retailer versus Georgia Power? If you're gonna charge one rate and you charge Georgia Power rate, what you gonna charge me when I set up to do it?
Right. As if you set up to do it, then you're a retail customer of Georgia Power Company. So we'll charge you just like we would someone who opens a restaurant or a retail store or something. We would charge you a commercial rate for that.
Is it adjustable? I know when you have large corporations or large companies coming in, there's a kind of reduced rate because they use so much.
Right. That's right. And that's what I was describing earlier in the demand and the energy and the customer charge is the high, it's called a load factor. It's getting into a technical term, but it's called a load factor. And that measures how much energy you use overall relative to the peak demand that you set. So we talked earlier about an individual charger that has an instantaneous demand of 350 kW. If there's one charger that's 350 kW and customers plug in and use 1,000 kilowatt hours a month, they're going to pay a lot higher rate per kilowatt hour than another 350 kW charger where more customers plug in and it uses 10,000 kilowatt hours a month, because Georgia Power is collecting a lot more revenue from that. So it can be the bill that would come would be on a lower cents per kilowatt hour to be able to pay that investment off.
Well, how you gonna do rural Georgia? There aren't that many cars.
Right.
In rural Georgia.
Right.
So if I'm in rural Georgia and I buy electric, what is it gonna cost me to get plugged up?
Right. And I think that's part of what we were talking about is Georgia Power is trying to fill in some of those gaps where maybe the commercial market's not ready for charging companies to come in there yet because not enough people would plug up. So we're trying to fill in the gaps in those corridors where they're not quite filled in so that people can have them. The vast majority of people with EVs charge at home. So they would just charge on the residential rate and pay at that rate.
Well, can it go 300 miles?
Yeah, the new ones can go 300.
miles.
Mhm.
So you gotta find a service station somewhere to fill up.
If you're traveling across the state, yes, sir, you would. That's right.
All right. Thank you. Next, we got Jeff Pratt. Georgia EMCs.
Chairman Kelsert, thank you. Committee members, appreciate the time today. I know your time's limited, so we'll be very brief. And we have some slides, maybe not. So I'll quickly start those. I work for Green Power EMC. We're a wholesale company that provides services to the electric cooperatives in the state of Georgia. Specifically, I work with renewable energy and emerging technologies like EVs and help our cooperatives work on those different programs that meet those needs. Electric vehicles create a huge opportunity for the state and challenges because it is an emerging technology, one that's in its early phases of development. This is not new to the utility business. We've seen that over many, many years. It started with the washing machines. They were new at one time. Electric heat was new at one time. Water heaters, electric water heaters were new. How about most recently, probably heat pumps, new technology, and our cooperatives have really been in a position of helping customers understand that technology and apply it and get value out of that. We view EVs very, very similar to that. We want to help our customers understand what they are looking at this new technology and help them apply it and get value out of that. And to do that, we need to educate them and train them. Just a couple slides here. Challenges. Let me talk about those for a moment. Challenges are emerging markets, customer adoption rates are, we don't know what that's going to be yet. Just like cell phones, we don't know for sure how quickly it's going to be adopted. If you remember back in 1990, well, the cars are the same way. But what I will tell you is that the utilities and co-ops specifically serve a huge part of the state, and we much like George Power said, have a real interest in making sure that charging infrastructure is available. This is similar chart you've seen before. What is the trajectory of EV adoption across the country? It is on a geometric pace. But if you note, in the last 8 years, 9 years, there's only been 2.2 million that have been adopted so far out of 280 million vehicles in the country. 1%. It's going to go up fast, but we're still in very early days. So there's not a lot of cars on the road in Georgia yet, but we have to be prepared with proper infrastructure to make that happen. And one of the things that's really driving that is just not only customers' interest, but the manufacturers making them available. Just recently with Rivian and some others, pickup trucks in rural Georgia are likely to be available. And I think that's going to be a game changer. This is the rural areas of the state in three different graphs showing the urban areas on the left, middle is rural counties, and on the right, it's the super rural counties, very rural areas. Note that the darker the color, the less EV adoption has taken place so far. Part of that is because not the right vehicles are available for the clients or the customers there. Second reason is they don't have a lot of good places to charge yet in those rural areas. Well, we just want to be able to do that as utilities to add value and help get us to a point where our customers in these rural areas have an opportunity to charge. So I'm going to focus on this last slide here just a little bit and just for a moment. And I mentioned training and educating our members. We want them to make good decisions with this new technology. We want our members to understand how to apply this technology to help their lifestyle and help them in their businesses. We want them to have a good customer satisfaction, member satisfaction with these pieces. That's going to take a lot of engagement, just like it did with heat pumps and air conditioners and water heaters. And that's what we're in the middle of doing. It's going to take infrastructure. Some of that infrastructure we plan on providing. But I will tell you, most of the infrastructure will be provided by the private market as we move forward. And we want to sell energy to those private actors. We just want to help get it there so it makes sense for them. And that's the role we think the co-ops want to play. We want to ensure the availability of this reliable and cost-effective energy. And we are in this new market. We're starting to study appropriate rates that will help this new class of customer make sense as we move forward. The ones we have now may work fine. We just don't know because it's emerging and we're starting to study it. And that'll be a part of our process and our regulatory rate making process that we have in the state for our co-ops. And lastly, mention this concept. We're in the process today of helping bridge the gap from early adoption to mainstream adoption. That will occur in the next 5, 8, 10 years, something like that. And I think that that's the key position that co-ops are in today in helping our members move in that direction. So we look forward to working with all stakeholders in this area and making this a very robust part of the marketplace. Thank you very much.
Thanks for being with us. All right, Angela Holland. I think we may be almost to the end here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Mr. Chairman, you started with, you had a hard stop at 4, so.
Don't pay any attention to me. Go ahead on.
Okay.
It worked, though. I got us almost all out of here.
There's information in the packets that I left with you. So, and my testimony is in there. So I was glad to skip through, hit the highlights if I needed to, but thank you. My name is Angela Holland, and I serve as the president of the Georgia Association of Convenience Stores. We represent large chains and small independents as well. Our association believes that now is the time, and a year from now will be too late for our industry to work on legislation to allow the retail reselling of electricity. In fact, what we've seen since the 2021 regular legislative session, I would agree, we're already behind. I understand that the utilities feel this is an issue that we're rushing with this legislation, but frankly, it's been rushed on us. In late 21, President Biden announced a $15 billion investment to fund a national network of 500,000 charging stations. The White House press release states through a combination of grant and incentive programs for state and local governments and the private sector, it will support a transformational acceleration in deployment of a mix of chargers in apartment buildings, public parking throughout communities, and a robust fast charging along our nation's roadways. Convenience stores are in the right locations to provide fuel to motorists, whether that fuel is petroleum-based or any other alternative fuel, including electricity. In addition to the Biden administration announcement, in November 2021, 11 automakers, including Ford and General Motors, signed the 2021 UN Climate Convention's Conference of the Parties Agreement to accelerate transition to zero-emission vehicles. The first week in January, Kia and Hyundai announced they will no longer design gas-powered engines. Further, Chrysler, the fourth largest automaker in the world, announced plans to launch its first battery-operated vehicle and transition completely to an all-electric offering. Mercedes-Benz, Jaguar, and Volvo have also announced plans to switch from internal combustion engines to electric. And additionally, Toyota announced they will have 15 electric vehicle models by 2025. The Edison Electric Institute estimates there will be 18 million EVs on the highways by 2030. While this certainly won't happen overnight, it does represent a sea change, one that requires a tremendous amount of cooperation from retailers, energy providers, and elected officials. In Georgia, the convenience store industry finds ourselves without the ability to resell electricity amidst a monopoly of electric utilities and without a clearly defined wholesale rate. Over the past weeks, we've met with our utility companies, all of which support the ability for convenience stores and others to resell power. But that, however, is not the only issue we have, and we hope that we can reach an agreement such that all parties can work together to foster competition and thrive in a new marketplace. Our job, our number one priority, is to fuel motorists, be it fossil fuels, compressed natural gas, propane, or Slurpee. The utility's job is to produce power. As you know, convenience stores operate in a very robust, competitive market, while utilities are granted the protections of a monopoly. The announcement of 6 major utilities, frankly speaking, scares us. This year, the Electric Highway Coalition, made up of American Electric Power, Dominion Energy, Duke Energy, Entergy Corporation, the Southern Company, and the Tennessee Valley Authority announced a plan to ensure that electric vehicle drivers would have access to a seamless network of charging stations in their territories. Currently, the power companies are advertising that they are building a convenient network of community chargers for customers all over the state. And while this sounds good in theory, it guarantees the utilities a monopoly on providing fuel to motorists. If the utility companies are allowed to rate-base infrastructure and provide the electricity to themselves, it alienates or eliminates competition and disincentivizes the private sector to invest in vehicle charging. As business owners and entrepreneurs, you can understand the hesitation convenience stores and operators have investing in electric vehicle charging when they can't resell power on a level playing field. As of today, companies that have invested in chargers are selling time. You can pay a per hour or per minute fee, but there's also a monthly subscription required for some of those. Accompanying the resale and the monopoly issues is a wholesale rate issue. Power companies, in essence, would be buying their own product and may not be subject to extra tariffs and fees and demand charges. I recently reviewed a power bill from one of my members. The total bill for 1 month for one location was $2,200 The power portion of the bill was $400, and there were a couple of additional nominal fees, but a system maintenance agreement fee for over $1,700. That's what we refer to as a demand charge. Each month, locations pay demand charges, but if they exceed their peak allowance, they pay an additional demand fee. Since power is billed retroactively, owners of chargers wouldn't know whether the rate at which they charge motorists would be profitable or not. For this reason, we've asked our utilities to work with us on a wholesale electric vehicle charging rate, only available for the use of recharging vehicle battery in a commercial setting. Again, this is not an issue. We have reached an agreement. However, Alabama Power, a division of the Southern companies, offers a business electric vehicle charging rate to privately owned entities in Alabama. In addition, the Tennessee Valley Authority, who provides power in North Georgia, also offers a business electric vehicle charging rate and has done so since 2018. So we're not asking for Georgia Power to do anything that our neighboring utilities haven't already done. We know this is a complicated issue. We respect that. And our fear is that without legislative change, convenience store retailers won't have the opportunity to continue what it is we do best.
You mentioned a bill legislation. I read the first readers every morning and we assign them to committees. I don't believe I've seen a bill yet.
Hasn't been introduced yet.
It's times of the essence. You better get it on because crossover days in just a few weeks.
Thank you for the advice.
We'll get to that in a minute. Thank you for being with us, Angela. Final speaker, Corey Urshow with Rivian Automotive.
Thank you so much. And I'll keep it brief. Chairman Cowsert and esteemed members of the committee, thank you so much for the opportunity and privilege of testifying today. My name is Corey Urshow. I am Senior Manager of Public Policy and Senior Counsel at Rivian with a focus on charging and energy policy. Rivian Automotive welcomes the opportunity to submit testimony as Georgia prepares for the opportunities of powering electric vehicles. Rivian is an American manufacturer of all electric adventure vehicles with over 10,000 employees across the US and thousands more coming to Georgia. Rivian's focus is the design, development, manufacture, and distribution of all electric zero-emission vehicles, specifically pickups and sport utility vehicles. It is Rivian's mission to keep the world adventurous forever and displace the heaviest polluting passenger vehicles on US roads today with models powered by locally generated electricity. To enable passenger vehicles on US roads today, to enable this rollout and maximize the economic and environmental benefits of EVs, Rivian will be building out 2 complementary charging networks to support transportation electrification nationwide, including in Georgia. These are the Rivian Adventure Network and the Rivian Waypoints Network. Rivian is also working with states nationwide to deploy Rivian Waypoints charging stations across national and state parks to enable all electric access to our treasured public lands. As such, Rivian is working to bring charging services to Georgia state parks and other public lands, ensuring that Georgians can charge electric vehicles in every corner of the state, including the most rural and underserved communities. Rivian applauds the committee's efforts to gather information regarding the development of public EV charging infrastructure and offers the following input for consideration. One of the critical benefits of electric vehicles is the ability to recharge consistently and conveniently from the comfort of one's own home. For many Georgians, this will comprise the vast majority of charging events. For those without access to reliable home charging, a thoughtful public network will be critical, recognizing that one size may not fit all. While highways will necessitate high power charging rates from 100 to upwards of 350 kilowatts to enable a fueling experience most familiar to those with gas cars, there is a range of other public charging use cases that will play important roles. For example, community charging hubs in dense urban or remote rural and underserved areas could be better suited for lower power chargers to meet charging needs. It is vital that charging in the state's rural communities is as affordable, convenient, and accessible as in metropolitan Atlanta, regardless of anticipated utilization. Rivian also encourages efforts to streamline local permitting and interconnection processes. Delays in infrastructure installation can be largely attributed to extended timelines for permitting and interconnection approvals from local authorities. The pace of infrastructure deployment could therefore be notably accelerated by encouraging strategic efforts to streamline these processes and reduce overall project timelines. We anticipate working closely with utilities to identify sites with available electrical capacity to avoid expensive and time-consuming grid upgrades where available, and we would encourage others to do the same. We would also be remiss if we didn't mention that the ability to price by kilowatt hour for the resale of electricity is really critical to making the experience the most like filling up a gas car with a gallon of gas. This one-to-one replacement is going to be an important factor to getting folks to switch over. Thank you for the opportunity to comment on this important topic as Georgia looks to the next chapter of charging infrastructure deployment in the state, prioritizing accelerated deployment and reliable operation of infrastructure while making the charging experience as seamless, convenient, and affordable as refueling with gas will be critical to supporting the state's growing electric transportation economy. We look forward to partnering with Georgia as it supports the rollout of electric vehicles and important charging infrastructure, and welcome follow-up discussions on the topics outlined here today. Thank you so much for the consideration of this committee, and I look forward to any questions y'all may have.
Okay. Thank you for being with us. We're not going to have time for questions today. We run a little bit over, and we need to be fair to the other committee process as well. Okay, tell me those numbers again for Thursday. We're going to hear two bills on Thursday afternoon. One of them, Senate Bill 393, and the other one is 438. Just so everybody's aware. This is a conversation to be continued. It's very educational. We all came in here today, and what do you think about the third grade level? Maybe we've graduated to the fourth grade. We've got a ways to go. I know just questions running through my mind. I'm going to want to hear from the PSC. I see Tom Kraus here. Try to key somebody up to let them know we need to hear a little bit from them about how they're going to handle rates for this, because I can see that interplay is going to be interesting, and probably the DOT as well. So I'll be in touch. And if any of the rest of you that didn't speak today are interested in being heard or having your thoughts expressed, feel free to just put it in writing or email and send it to my office. Cindy West is here, my administrative assistant. You can stop in. We're at 432. Give her what you have or any ideas or suggestions even. And what I'm going to try to do is, as the schedule evolves, when we have other openings that may pop up between now and the end of the session, we will have at least one more skull session like this to try to get it some concepts. I haven't seen any bills yet. There may be some, and this was partly to give us a little base of knowledge to know the issues before we start wading in on these. And I agree, we're early in the process, but not really too far ahead of the curve. As that federal money's coming down, we got to figure out how we're going to use that where it fits in. Thank everybody for being here today, and we will see you on Thursday afternoon, 3 o'clock. Meeting adjourned.